Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Tassitano. I'm an occupational therapist. I work at Today's Therapy Solutions. I see children in their homes, in the clinic, and in the community environment, as well as working in a few schools. I am also currently pursuing a doctorate of science degree at OUHSC. I have recently started learning a little bit about compassion fatigue and burnout and was able to do a presentation for Today's Therapy Solutions, which then Kelly Marshall and the team at OAC thought might be beneficial for you all. So I'm happy to share some information and some resources with you that I think can be very beneficial for your personal health and for the outcomes for the children that you serve. So, compassion fatigue is important to me because it's something that doesn't get talked about a lot in our professions, but it's something that's very important and can affect so many of us. I think we've heard the terms burnout and compassion fatigue a little bit more lately with the COVID pandemic and all of those things. So, it is becoming a little bit easier to talk about. However, there's still so much unknown and that we don't know. And I didn't know until I started learning and digging a little bit more into this topic. I think it's so important for everybody to have information on this so they can learn how to best support themselves and best help themselves and take care of themselves, but also knowing how to support your team members and um, what compassion fatigue and burnout might mean for you or for your team members and ways that we can all work together to combat it as a whole. So, some objectives for today, we're going to define burnout, compassion satisfaction, and compassion fatigue, identify the relationships between those three and why it's important to you. Discuss contributing and alleviating factors of compassion fatigue, and then understand how to apply the evidence to support yourself and your team. Burnout is kind of a common term that we hear a little bit more, and most people may have heard of burnout. It's physical, mental exhaustion due to the inability to cope with everyday occurrences or environments. Um, when you're feeling burnout, you're experiencing burnout, you may feel reduced personal accomplishment, reduced professional accomplishment, and you feel like you're not meeting your goals or being successful in your job. Burnout is not directly related to working with individuals with trauma. It's something that people across all professions can experience and likely do experience. Um, it may be related to the pressures of your job. So, in the instances um, that we may be talking about, caseload size or classroom size or the expectations that are put on you, as well as institutional stress. So, this is where we see a lot of institutional and administrative factors may impact um, burnout for some if they're not feeling satisfied or supported at their job. With burnout, some characteristics are frustration, feelings of loss of control. So, frustrated that you're not feeling successful and competent and supported in your job. You feel a little bit out of control that you cannot do your job the way you want to do your job. On the other hand, secondary traumatic stress is similar to burnout, but it is not the same thing. This secondary traumatic stress, or STS, is results from working with individuals who have experienced trauma. So, whereas burnout, most people in most professions can feel burnout, and it's really related to institutional factors, how supported you're feeling, and how successful you're feeling. STS is related to working with individuals who have experienced trauma and how we process that and how we are able to work with those people. So this occurs when you're hearing other people's trauma while not experiencing it yourself, and when you cannot help the people you want to help. So you're hearing about this trauma that other people may be experiencing, and you're feeling like you're not helping them, or you're feeling like you're not able to help them. You may feel overwhelmed or helpless. So you want to help people, and you're just not sure you're doing a great job at that, or you're not sure that you have the tools to help them. You may feel very overwhelmed, um, like you're not sure how to go about helping people, and you feel like you're not being successful in your role. So some similarities between burnout and secondary traumatic stress is reduced job satisfaction, feelings of exhaustion and overwhelmed, and they both can affect personal and life and work life or relationships. So these are not when it's just affecting your work, it's kind of carrying over into majority of the aspects of your life, and that's when we know we really need to be addressing this in a bigger way. So some differences which I've talked a little bit about. Burnout can occur in any work or situation, whereas SCS is related to working with individuals, children, or families who have experienced trauma. And STS is what related to what you hear, and burnout is more related to what you personally experience. You can have them both, they can overlap. It's not a one or the other situation. I did want to talk a little bit about trauma and what that means. A lot of times when we hear trauma, we may think abuse, neglect, or physical trauma. However, there is trauma related to families and the people that we work with as well. So it may also be related to individuals with special needs experiencing trauma in a different way and how they experience the world around them, and then families of individuals with special needs. There has been research to show that receiving a diagnosis or going through having a child or a family member with special needs is traumatic for the families experiencing that, and it's can be a cycle of trauma. So it can be something that kind of ebbs and flows the trauma that they're experiencing. I think it's also important to note trauma is based on how the person who's experiencing it feels. So something may happen to two different people, and they perceive it differently. And then in turn, when they're sharing it and they're sharing their feelings and their stories with you, some of them may have more of a trauma lens and some of them may not. And we don't know all the backstories coming in. So we may hear about things we weren't expecting with our families. Tends to, as we get closer with families and children, we learn a little bit more about them as they become more open to sharing and more comfortable, and we build that rapport. So while we may not see the signs of trauma at the very beginning of a relationship with a child or with a family, we have to all be prepared that those are some things that we may experience. Compassion satisfaction is the feeling of pleasure and satisfaction that you get from helping others. It's what we all want to feel in our job, and many of us do at some level feel satisfied from helping others. That's why we get into these different roles and these different positions. Compassion satisfaction does require empathy and a willingness and a want to help others. If you're willing to and you want to help others, and you're able to, and you feel successful with helping others, then you're going to experience satisfaction with that. It allows you to be supportive and encouraging team members when you're feeling satisfied in your work and you're feeling like you are helping the people that you want to be helping. On the other hand, compassion fatigue is defined as a state of exhaustion and dysfunction biologically, psychologically and socially as a result of prolonged exposure to compassion stress and all it invokes. So, compassion fatigue is kind of our big higher level of cumulative burnout and STS. When those pile up and they're not alleviated by compassion satisfaction or by satisfaction in other areas, compassion fatigue can be present. So, compassion fatigue is related to those organizational factors, as it's, repetitive burnout and cumulative burnout contribute to compassion fatigue. And it does also require empathy. So, this one is a little tricky because it requires empathy to have compassion fatigue because you feel that you're not able to help the people that you want to help. And we feel that as empathetic people and empathetic listeners and empathetic workers. So it's more severe than STS or burnout alone. And if we're not addressing STS and burnout early, this is when we may lead to getting compassion fatigue or seeing our team members develop compassion fatigue. Some characteristics are extreme exhaustion, anger, irritability, having and using poor coping strategies or behaviors, decreased sympathy or empathy, and job dissatisfaction. So, poor coping strategies and behaviors. Maybe you felt like nothing has been working, and so then you have those poor coping strategies or behaviors that are atypical for you. Decreased sympathy and empathy because you're feeling like you're not helping people anyways. So it's easier to turn that off or to try and turn that off than continue to feel unsatisfied. Again, like secondary traumatic stress, it can affect your work and your home or personal life. It affects your work because it may lead to poor relationships with colleagues, poor relationships with clients, families, students, communities, all the people that you're interacting with and serving on a daily basis. When you have compassion fatigue, those relationships are impacted and it can negatively impact the services you provide. So it's very important to address it for yourself and for your own well being, and also for the well being of your team and those who you serve. And on the flip side, how it affects your life, which I was talking about, it does affect those personal life, social life, all the other aspects of your life outside of your job, which we know are important, and that's your life and your family, and where you need to feel successful and supported to have that healthy work and life balance. So it can lead to or exacerbate other mental health conditions, including post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, or depression, lead to physical and mental exhaustion. So you can start to see some biological repercussions with your health and your well-being due to compassion fatigue. And it impacts all areas of your life. It's not just work, it's not just home, it's going out with your friends or not being able to go out with friends, um, going to church or not being able to do that anymore, or other activities that are meaningful to you becoming not as meaningful and important for you. So it's affecting all areas of your life. This is a little visual that talks a little bit about um, burnout and secondary traumatic stress and compassion satisfaction and their relationship to each other and to compassion fatigue. So we see compassion fatigue in the middle. That's the big thing that we're talking about. It can be raised or elevated with burnout and secondary traumatic stress not being addressed, or it can be alleviated with compassion satisfaction. So, when there's a stronger pool of compassion satisfaction, we're feeling supported, we're feeling that we are supporting others, and we're feeling that we're being supported. We have higher compassion satisfaction, which is going to level out the repercussions of burnout and STS on compassion fatigue. So, why does this matter? Burnout is prevalent among what we consider helping professions, and mental health professionals experience more burnout than others. So, even though burnout can be related to all fields, we do see in these helping and mental health professionals experience more burnout than other professions. The helping professions are maybe teachers, therapists, OTs or PTs, people working with um, individuals with special needs that are maybe not directly mental health professionals, but are working with others who need them to be helping them. There is an inverse relationship between age and burnout. So, as your age increases, burnout decreases. And those who are younger tend to experience more burnout than those who are older. Trauma related trainings reduce compassion fatigue. So, this is really important when thinking about what kind of education and what kind of continuing education classes you want to attend, or you want to support your team members attending, because we see and the evidence shows that trauma related trainings do reduce compassion fatigue. So when you're trained more and you're more informed, you have less compassion fatigue. Rural providers experience burnout more than urban providers. So this may be due to less services in those rural areas. And so potentially when people are seeking us out and receiving services, they may be in a heightened state of trauma or in higher need than those seeking services in urban areas where there's more availability. Additionally, in rural areas, as providers, teachers, professionals, we may have less support overall and less people to rely on to help us than our urban providers. So that's something to keep in mind. What these other red flags or indicators of a higher likelihood of burnout may be. And compassion fatigue can be present among teachers and staff working with underserved populations. So, what can we do? We can address burnout and STS when it begins to occur. We can do this as an individual for yourself, or you can do this as a team. And we want to know the signs to look for in yourself and others. So, again, we talked a lot about that reduced empathy and sympathy, impaired relationships with colleagues or the people you serve. So, if you're noticing that in yourself or in somebody else, decreased satisfaction across their life, across work, personal life, and just those feelings of exhaustion that are not able to be alleviated. So we know we have a little bit more information about the signs, but we also need to have strategies to alleviate these symptoms and alleviate burnout and secondary traumatic stress. Traditionally, we have been told to address burnout and compassion fatigue after it has occurred. So, a lot of the traditional research, a lot of the traditional things that we're taught are go do things outside of work to take care of yourself at work. So, meditation, good self care, physical activity. Make sure you go take care of yourself when you get off work. Make sure you get exercise when you get off work. Go get a massage every now and then. Those are some common things that we have been told to address our own compassion fatigue or burnout. Um, these are all things that are outside of work. However, compassion fatigue, secondary traumatic stress, and burnout are related to our work. So the question is, why would we address it outside of work only? And what are ways that we can begin to think about this a little more holistically and a little more within our work? And how can we ingrain and embed supports for ourselves within our daily work life so it's not something else for us or for you to do outside of work? When you're told to do all these things outside of work, adding to your burden and not alleviating anything from your burden. It's another step possibly to do. And it might not be something you can do. If you're already feeling these symptoms of exhaustion, it's going to be really hard to go get that physical activity outside of work after you've had a long day or something like that. So this model is called CSERT, or Components for Enhancing Clinician Experience and Reducing Trauma, focusing on maintaining relaxed states and satisfied feelings, or re-entering those feelings whenever we go stray from them. The important thing and the big difference from the traditional approaches is that these strategies can be learned, they can be taught, and they can be learned, and they can be done in real time. So these are things that we can do daily during our work tasks, during our tasks that are leading to burnout or compassion fatigue, that can be done while we're experiencing it. It's not something else to go do when you're on your own at home. It's not a focus on self-care. It's a focus on these 5 different areas of addressing your experiences and reducing trauma within the moment. The first one we're going to talk about is experiential engagement, maintaining a connection to the patient, student, family, and their experience while acknowledging and experiencing that feelings arise on both ends. So we want to connect with those that we're working with, but we also know that feelings are going to come up. So we know we may feel stress when we're in a situation we've never been in before, or we may feel upset whenever someone divulges something to us that we weren't expecting to hear. So we need to know those feelings may come up, and we need to experience those feelings as they arrive rather than pretend that they're not existing. So for experiential engagement, we talk about 3 skills: intentionality, conscious acknowledgement of experience, and non-reactivity. So intentionality, feel your feelings. So that means, like I was just saying, when those feelings arise, be prepared to feel them and accept them, and be intentional and you're letting yourself experience those feelings and then releasing them naturally. We're not just pushing them away, and we're not holding on to them. We're acknowledging that that conversation upset us, or that task was really hard and I did not feel successful in it. Let me acknowledge that feeling, but then let's let it go as well. And then conscious acknowledgement of experience. Be aware of your body state, of what your body's doing, how your body's reacting. Use reflective questioning, like, what am I feeling right now? And label your feelings. So it's not just that was hard, it's that made me feel this way. Using those labels and those reflective questioning is going to help you acknowledge the experience, experience the feelings and experience the experience, and release it rather than pushing it away and ignoring it. And then non-reactivity. So we're allowing the feelings to fade instead of forcing the feelings away. We don't want to say, that made me sad, I don't want to deal with that sadness, but we want to accept that, maybe use some reflective questioning. Why do I feel that way? What made that feeling occur in me? And then allowing those feelings to fade naturally, instead of pushing them away and acting like they didn't exist. So to help yourself, taking time to acknowledge your feelings, avoid forcing your feelings away, and return to a calm state with deep breathing, a short rest, or a short walk if needed. And how to help others. So check in with your team. If you know someone is experiencing something challenging, check in with them on how they're doing. Acknowledge when things are hard or difficult. If you were in a meeting with a group of colleagues, acknowledging that was hard is okay, and can help others feel able to acknowledge that things were hard for them as well. Plan for short break times after things that may be challenging. And then if you're feeling comfortable with it, share your feelings and your experiences with others. The next one is decreasing or regulating rumination, which rumination is a mind wandering state. It's not productive, it's not super conscious, and it's not problem solving. It's your mind replaying and rethinking events or scenarios, or replaying what you would have done differently. We want to decrease rumination because, again, it's unproductive and it just expands our time on a challenging situation. It's not like experiential engagement was letting us feel them, but then naturally go away. Rumination is holding on to those feelings and those stressors. So, the 4 skills for reducing rumination are acknowledgement. So, identify it when you're ruminating. That's a big first step. um, Avoid telling yourself, I'm problem solving, I'm working this out, when it's been going on for an extended period of time and you're not able to move on. So acknowledge that I'm ruminating about this right now and it's not being productive. Focused engagement reduces rumination. So we're redirecting our conscious thought to something we can focus on. You may focus on the rumination process. So actually focusing on it via writing it down or really active problem solving, rather than the passive letting it just roll around in your head. Or engage in a cognitive or physical activity that may take your mind off of the rumination. Social engagement, engaging with someone else, that's going to be an active involvement in something. A conversation about your experience may be beneficial, or a conversation or activity not related to that may be beneficial as well. You want what you're doing whenever you have identified that you're ruminating to be concrete, experiential, and specific, and have an action oriented. This is going to help you decrease thinking about those emotions or feelings and create a plan. Like I said, the focus on the rumination process, creating a plan, putting a pen to paper, thinking about it in that way is active and involved. You can give experiences and specific examples rather than just this rumination process of rethinking events in your head over and over. So I did want to kind of clarify rumination versus experiential engagement, because they may seem to be on opposite ends of the spectrum. Experiential engagement is allowing yourself to feel and release those feelings, while rumination is feeling those feelings and holding on to them with no release. And experiential engagement, we want to focus on a calm state. We want to return to that calm state naturally by feeling and then releasing our experiences and our feelings. And then rumination itself leads to an anxious state. You may feel a higher heart rate, increased breath rate, or increased agitation when you're ruminating. Those may be some signs to key in to identify that, oh, I am ruminating right now. Let me create a specific plan, an action plan, or do something active and engaging in order to regulate that rumination cycle. Rumination is typically done independently, and experiential engagement can involve others as needed, again, with that reflective questioning and discussing. To combat rumination, we want to involve others in a social activity as well. So, to help yourself, again, those goal directed or focused activities, which you can take some time now or after this training to quickly jot down some ideas to have in your head for the next time you feel that you're ruminating. Some ideas that I've used are cleaning up a room to prepare for the next activity, making a needed phone call, journal focus with a focused plan, listen to a podcast or something that's going to engage you, and you will actively listen to, or box breathing, which is that breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and hold for 4. You're counting, you're engaging in a different process, and your focus should be on your breathing instead of no focus and passive rumination. Engage in something socially. make a social phone call, ask a coworker to tell you something they've been working on. You can engage with someone else to discuss what you're ruminating on when it's an active problem solving technique. To help others, if you notice someone has just come out of a hard situation or is just seeming to be having a hard time focusing and engaging today, give them a task. Ask them to help you with something. Ask them to talk about the situation out loud if they want to, um, and talk to them about something unrelated but important or relevant. Next, we have our conscious narrative, which is three skill sets: an antecedent, a concurrent, and a consolidation narrative. It's you creating your narrative of the experience or occurrence and describing the situation in a way to calm that dysregulation and promote compassion satisfaction, as opposed to um, describing it and giving characteristics that may lead to compassion fatigue or may promote compassion fatigue. So the antecedent narrative is before you're doing something that you think is going to be challenging or uncomfortable. Define your role, know what your job is and your role is, and how you're going to address your role within that situation. And then understanding and narrating that you do possess the skills to do your job. So if you think something's going to be hard or it's going to be challenging for you, reminding yourself of what your role and what your goal in that situation is going to be, and that you do possess the skills to do that. You're in a position where you can address what you need to address. You have the support to do that. The concurrent narrative is during the interaction or event. So, this is when we're thinking about things that we don't really like to do, that we perceive as being hard or challenging, or a part of our job that we really don't like to do. During those times, we want to maintain an attitude of problem solving, not reaction. So, we want to be problem solving, how we're going to get through this and how we're going to experience this situation. You can continue telling yourself you have the skills to address the situation, like you did in the antecedent narrative, or that you're learning about new ways to address the situation. So, either of those strategies are important during your interaction or the thing that you're doing that is maybe not your favorite, or maybe something that can sometimes bring up those feelings of stress and burnout. When we tell ourselves we have the skills, or at least we're learning new ways to address the situation, that allows us to be active participants in using those skills. And this is a time when take your time through those situations. Don't feel like you have to rush and get them done, but it's okay if you need to stop and take a minute and remind yourself of the skills that you have or the things that you're learning about. And then at the end, after the event has occurred, a consolidation narrative to reflect on that experience. So put your experience in words, write it down, talk it out to someone else, or talking out loud to yourself about what the experience was, what you did, what your role was, what the other person did, or what other events occurred. Include how your skills are developing and growing and the things you're learning. So, kind of comparing that to the way I handled this yesterday and today I did this differently. And how are you growing? This is a big time for reflective questionings, both for yourself or for those you're working with. So, to help yourself, you want to plan for 5 minutes before a challenging task to talk yourself through it. So, again, identify that role that you play and the skills that you have to address that challenging task. Identify a person who can coach you when needed, and also a person who can boost your confidence when needed, and a person to ask for help when needed. So, having those three people, um, three different people, it could be the same person, but typically it would be different relationships with different people that you can go to when you know you're going to have these challenging experiences to help you before, or work with you on your consolidation reflection after. Active listening. So we're listening to understand first. We're listening and experiencing the event or task to understand rather than to react. And journaling or deliberately reflecting on a situation. So, what went well and what skills do you still need? When you're trying to help others with this, be available to coach, listen, or guide those around you as needed. Know the skills that your teammates have. So, being able to remind them of the skills that they have and know the skills that you have to give to your teammates. So, if you know someone has challenges with a certain aspect of the job that you feel very successful in, know that you have those skills to share with your teammates, and then know when they have those skills to share with you. When providing feedback, start with guiding the person to reflection. So guide them to reflective questionings before you give your input on how the situation went. If you're comfortable, you can share times you felt uncomfortable and how you use this process of the conscious narrative to get through those challenges. We also have reducing emotional labor, which is enhancing the skills needed to decrease the burden of job tasks or our perceived burden of job tasks. So, understanding what is different between the expressed emotions that someone says or someone shows and what you personally experience. Those are different emotions and different situations. And you may be feeling them at the same time, or you may be feeling them a little later, but what's expressed or shown is different than what you're experiencing. This is also important, finding the pieces of work you enjoy and understand why you enjoy those things. Whenever we know what parts of our job bring us joy and what it is about those that make us feel joyful and make us feel successful, we can then use those ideas to tie into our more challenging or parts of our job that we don't like as much. So, what do you really like about a certain part of your job? What makes you feel really confident in it? And how can you use those strategies and those things to um, address and change the way you feel and you think about the more challenging tasks? So the skill of empathy. Empathy has kind of sometimes traditionally been taught of something you have or something you don't have, but we are now learning that it is a skill and it can be developed and refined. Um, what if empathy for a specific patient doesn't occur naturally? And that's normal. A specific student doesn't occur naturally. That happens, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you don't like your job. It doesn't mean you don't like what you're doing. It just means we have a area to work on and something we need to build a skill in. So we want to take a stance of curiosity. So question, what is happening? Why is this response happening? Without focusing on labeling the response as negative or aversive. So, why is this child having such a hard time today versus um, they're deciding to not listen to me today? So, let's think curiously and think, why is the parent feeling this way? Or why am I hearing this from the parent versus labeling the parent or the person you're talking to as um, being difficult or giving you a difficult time? Again, with that active listening, listening to understand first and react and problem solve and give ideas second. So we just want to understand what is happening, why is this happening? Um, let's be curious with our conversations and with our challenges. Use your own behavioral strategies to facilitate autonomic regulation. So, in the moment, when you're getting stressed, our body responds biologically with increased heart rate, increased breath rate, and feelings of agitation. Maybe those fight or flight responses are kicking in. So, having strategies that work for you to facilitate getting back to a calm state is very important. So, deep breathing, imagery, and intent toward empathy. So, using things to think about what empathy looks like and what empathy can be in this situation, and your own set of regulating behaviors. Deep breathing, taking just a minute to center yourself and calm yourself and maintain a calmness in those situations. Um, and then intentional learning of empathetic responses. So, being empathetic, not acting empathetic. There's an increased emotional labor with faking empathy. So we don't want to pretend to be empathetic to people. We want to use our curiosity and our active listening and what we know we like about other parts of our job to increase our empathetic responses. Again, using the therapeutic use of self, how can you relate to those situations may be beneficial as well. So, when you're looking at helping yourself, you can list the parts of the job that you love, list why you love those things, identify what makes you feel successful, and identify what makes you feel unsuccessful. Relate a challenging situation to a successful one and learn about the things that are challenging to you. How to help others. Tell others when you see them being successful or when you appreciate something they did. So that kind of is going to help them feel more successful, more confident, and more able to have those other strategies that, oh, I like this about my job because people feel confident when I do that. So telling others and sharing those times you see success and you appreciate something they did. Sharing evidence or resources on working through certain situations. Like, we saw more education and more knowledge leads to less burnout. So sharing those evidence and resources that you have is always a good idea. And plan for a check-in with someone had a hard day. If you know a colleague or a team member had a hard day, plan for a check-in at the end of the day or after work or something, just to let them know that we're acknowledging it and you are wanting to help them and work as a team. So then finally, we have parasympathetic recovery, similar to the last one, and that we are monitoring our internal states and we want to re-regulate. We want to maintain that regulation with a calm and steady heart rate, breath rate, decreased agitation, and identifying maybe what sensory overload might look like or feel like and how we can address those. This is done in real time. This is kind of the typical thing we've seen. Go on a walk or meditate or do yoga on the side, take a bubble bath. Those are all things to do to promote parasympathetic recovery, but those are done after the fact. This is done in real time during those challenging situations, doing that box breathing, taking some breaths, thinking of ways that you can address the sensory overload that you're feeling and the agitation that you're feeling in the moment. So what's important for this one is you have to be attuned to your internal state as you enter challenging situations and know those triggers and what it looks like for you whenever you're entering a dysregulated state. And then checking in as you're exiting those challenging situations as well. Am I still regulated? Am I still calm? Or do I need to give myself a break and give myself some time to re-regulate before I go enter another situation or another task? So your well-being becomes part of your daily job. Using breaks for mindfulness or relaxation throughout your day, even short, quick breaks for some deep breathing or just recentering yourself. Understanding when you need support or supervision and asking for it. And understanding when to ask others if they need support or supervision is another part of being a good team member as well. Professional teaming and social connection. So again, knowing your team members, knowing what they bring to the table, and knowing who can help you and what team members you have access to, and then having social connections with your team members and with others outside of your work. Standing and frequent movement. So getting your body moving and keeping your body moving throughout the day. If you're starting to feel that agitation or that stress, taking a short walk, standing up for a little bit can help with that as well. You want to have 20 minutes of focused engagement on a challenging but achievable task a day. So not something that you're doing without even thinking about it because you've done it so many times. It's not something you have to focus on anymore, and not something that's so challenging that you're going to be unsuccessful with it. So that focused engagement needs to be on that just right challenge. And having an accountability partner. So someone at your work who maybe has done this training or has listened to this recording that you feel you can talk about these steps and this model with. So again, we've talked about a lot of these, and helping others. Encourage team members to take short breaks as needed. Be open to offering advice to others or helping them find someone else suited to help them. Check in on your team and be willing to be an accountability partner. So, as a team, knowing your strengths and weaknesses of your team and of yourself, checking in formally or informally, sharing with each other those resources that help you be successful, your experiences, things that you feel confident in, and things that you need a little more help in, sharing all that with each other. And know that you and your team have the skills to accomplish your job. Reflect on others' needs and share what has worked and hasn't worked for you. So, your final task, I want you to think about as you finish up this recording and, taking a few minutes after finishing this recording and this training to identify one person from each of these areas that can support you when addressing compassion, fatigue, and burnout. So, one person at the admin or management level, one colleague at the same level as you, and one person from outside of work who you feel like you can go to and work through some of these challenges with when needed. So, this is a visual I have. Um, that just kind of talks a little bit and was helpful for me to create to be a quick reminder of these different skill sets of CSERT and things I can do to address these each area. If you have any questions, this is my email. You can also, I think, get with some of the admin and management at OAC, and they can either get you in contact with me or may be able to answer some questions as well. But thank you all so much for listening and for taking the time to listen and engage with this recording. And again, that's my email. Let me know if you have any questions or anything like that. Thank you.